Hot Topics brought together an amazing group of people today. It's not often you get to hear from Dennis Crowley and Kevin Ryan, who invented adtech and retail fashion, from people like Nick Baum, Alfred Lin of Sequoia. I mean, the caliber of people sharing their insights and their thoughts on this question of the New York ecosystem and how it compares to Silicon Valley and others, that's incomparable. It's very valuable for the couple hundred people in the room to hear from leaders like that. So the question before the group was, New York City has grown, investment is up 370% over the last decade. It's clearly the #2 tech center in the country after Silicon Valley, but there's a lot of chatter around New York not having produced the multi-billion-dollar successes, the Dropboxes, the Airbnbs, and the Pinterest and the like, and so there's still a sense of unfulfilled promise around New York. I thought it was a very balanced discussion. I mean, Kevin Ryan, who certainly spoke for how New York is going to produce great companies and already is, with companies like Etsy and MongoDB, and companies like Gilt in areas like fashion where there's domain expertise, companies like Bloomberg in certainly fintech that are naturals for the New York ecosystem. And yet even Kevin, a huge fan of New York, would admit there's shortages of executives who scaled companies. That will improve as you get generations. There's shortages of tech talent that will hopefully improve with the Cornell Technion establishment. And perhaps there's still a little bit more practical element to New York as the commercial capital, a little less likely to start companies like a Pinterest or a Dropbox or a freemium gaming app that has no obvious business model but becomes Facebook, the next Facebook. So I think there's a lot of talent that Nick Baum pointed out, though, here. Domain expertise, the creative classes want to live here, young people want to live here, and so New York is going to continue to produce tremendous companies. And even Alfred Lin from Sequoia, who represented the perspective of, hey, New York is not Silicon Valley. There's still some difference between the #1 market and the #2. Even Alfred would say, look, it's going to get better as there are more successes. People leave the Gilts and even the Site 59s to start new companies, and you get generations of more trained leaders, and companies get bigger and bigger with each generation. So Alfred led a pretty good debate around, is the fact that in Silicon Valley it's all tech all the time a positive in that you get this intense diffusion of knowledge and tips, or is it a negative because it's not quite as diverse a set of industries to draw domain expertise from? And do great companies grow out of domain expertise, or do they grow out of people with no background? And Sequoia pointed to WhatsApp as a company of founders that didn't come out of telecom, but they revolutionized messaging. So I think there was a really smart, intelligent debate. And in the end, I think the final analysis is New York doesn't have to be and isn't Silicon Valley. It can still create wonderful companies in a whole variety of sectors. And they pointed out a bunch of exciting companies from Blue Apron to Etsy that are going to lead, and Gilt and Foursquare that'll lead this next generation. Well, I think that we heard from companies that had lots of different approaches. Most of the companies waited till they had 120 to 160 employees and they nailed it before they tried to scale it internationally. And there was a lot of intelligent discussion around, it's not, there's a tough tension to manage between letting markets slip away that you want to be the first entrant on and take real estate in, and yet the really big cost, having to send founders, having to take management time and attention away from nailing it to get things right for Romania. Because if you're going to commit internationally, you really have to take each market's needs into effect, and that's very taxing on the core groups. There was a good discussion of, hey, you probably want to wait until you've nailed it in your home market before you try to scale it and replicate it. And there were very different models. We heard from the Make Love Not Porn founder that she calls on countries to set themselves up and sort of crowdsource where they'll go next. And then you heard different models like Heidi, the founder of Linkshare, where they looked at Japan as the most interesting market and chose a JV model. And so you saw lots of good templates to draw on and a lot of good insight, but most importantly, everyone everyone acknowledged that it is impossible to start a business now that's mobile or internet and ignore the fact that you're instantly going to have global pressure. So that was, I think, the deepest takeaway. Well, I think each business is going to be a little different. To your point, if you're Y Plan, you are inherently local. Until there is local inventory in San Francisco or New York, there's nothing to do on Y Plan, and most people will come and see, hey, we don't serve Houston, so wait. So that's a very market by market classic setup where you almost have to replicate the whole company in each region and build both supply and demand in balance. But then you have companies like Collective Eye, which Heidi founded, where it's really a network, and so it's company based. So the question is not geography at all, but who are the best companies around the world that can contribute data into this data sharing platform that can spit out real-time insights about your sales and business operations. So I think it really is going to vary by company, and we got to hear from a variety of different kinds of players in the panel, which is valuable, I think, for the audience.